Touch the leg. This is Tibet This Week. We bring you the latest news on Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration. The top headlines of the week. Sikyong expresses gratitude to Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Sikyong returns to Dharamshala after Northeast visit. Central Tibetan Administration congratulates Bhutila Karpoche, the Deputy Speaker of the Ontario Legislature. China objects formation of Mexican Parliamentary Tibet Support Group. Tibetan Delegations undertake Tibet Advocacy in Europe. Bureau de Tibet Paris receives 43rd Sakya Trizin Rinpoche. Coordinator Tsepri Lopan Tulku Ngawang Chokdup visits schools in Nepal. Office of Tibet Taiwan receives President of International Religious Freedom Secretariat. Upon hearing Speaker Nancy Pelosi's stepping down from the Democratic leadership in the U.S. House of Representatives, Sikyong wrote to her expressing his heartfelt gratitude for her unwavering support and commitment towards the just cause of Tibet. While lauding the unparalleled leadership of Speaker Pelosi, Sikyong stated that Tibetans are forever grateful for her support in strengthening bipartisan support for Tibet in the U.S. Congress and advancing the cause of Tibet as per the hopes and aspirations of Tibetans inside Tibet. Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced stepping down from Democratic leadership in the U.S. House of Representatives on Thursday this week. Sikyong returned to Dharamshala this week after his maiden visit to Tibetan settlements in northeast India since assumption of his duty as the Sikyong of the Central Tibetan Administration. Sikyong said his visit to the region this time as a state guest has been a meaningful one.
This is part of the Kashak's initiative to visit every single settlement, every single camp, every single institution to understand the need of the community and to enable ourselves to plan for the long term in future as to how do we develop our policies and programs based on the reality of the situation, particularly looking at the statistics, the numbers. And this 16th Kashak is very much focused on numbers, and all our future policies and programs will be driven by facts. Now, the next step is to reach out to the Tibetan communities the best, so whenever we travel to North America or Europe, we make space to meet with the Tibetan communities and also make it a point to meet with the younger generations of Tibetans, because if we are not able to empower these younger generations of Tibetans in the form of voluntary Tibet advocacy group or any other manner, then we would not have accomplished our job as the bridge generation to hand over the responsibilities to the younger generation. I think the voluntary Tibet advocacy group is going to be a very important initiative to empower the Tibetan youth all around the world, and I urge everybody to join that. We are still lacking behind a little bit in coordination, but we'll make up for that as soon as possible, and I urge everybody to join that and make it a success, because this is going to give us a lot of leverage in the future to optimize our potential in reaching out to the international community.
On the visit to the region, Sikyong met and interacted with Chief Minister of Arunachal Pradesh, Shri Pema Khanto, and Chief Minister of Meghalaya, Shri Conrad K. Sangma. Sikyong also met with other local Indian dignitaries from Shillong region, including Shri Donald Philip Walang, IAS Chief Secretary to the Government of Meghalaya. In Tawang, Sikyong met and interacted with state and district level officials of Arunachal Pradesh, highlighting the importance of collaboration between Tibetan and Memba communities in preserving common cultural heritages. Sikyong reviewed the situation of Tibetan community in Dimapur and urged them to take active participation in the Kashak's demographic survey initiative. Speaker Khenpo Sonam Temple of the Tibetan Parliament in Exile and Sikyong Pempa Tsering of the Central Tibetan Administration congratulated the Member of Provincial Parliament, Bhutila Karpoche, on getting elected as the Deputy Speaker for the 43rd Parliament of the Ontario Legislature. The Speaker and Sikyong congratulated Bhutila Karpoche for becoming the first Tibetan to assume such an eminent role. Sikyong Pempa Tsering also sent his congratulatory message to President Vlado Mirosevic on his election as the President of the Chilean Chamber of Deputies by expressing gratitude for the support and solidarity that the Chilean Chambers of Deputies have shown towards the cause of Tibet over the years. The formation of Group of Legislatures Friends of Tibet in the Chamber of Deputies in Mexico has irked the Chinese government. The Chinese embassy has visited the chamber and met with President of the Chamber of Deputies to object the integration of Mexican Parliamentary Tibet Support Group and demanded to have Chinese flag waved in the chamber. Responding to the Chinese preposterous objection, Deputy Salvador Caro Cabrera said that this objection is a moral victory for the people of Tibet as the Chamber of Deputies are influencing. The cause is recognized against the genocidal policy called One China.
From my point of view, this is a moral victory of the people of Tibet because we are influencing, so the cause is recognized against the genocidal policy of One China. Thank you, and free Tibet.
A Tibetan parliamentary delegation consisting of parliamentarians Tempa Yarpel, Yutun Okatsang and Wangde Dorji and representative of Tibet Bureau Geneva, Tile Chugi, paid courtesy calls on the presidents of Chamber of Deputies of the Parliament of Czech Republic, Deputy Director of Department of Asia and the Pacific and Mayor of the city of Prague on Wednesday this week. During their meetings with aforementioned leaders, the Tibetan parliamentary delegation apprised them of the critical situation inside Tibet and urged for their continued resolute support for Tibet. On Monday this week, Representative Tile Chugi, along with Tibetan parliamentary delegation, took part in the conference on Tibet titled "What Can Czech Republic and the European Union Do to Address the Crisis in Tibet and Why is its Resolution in Europe's Interest in Czech Senate?" The conference was organized by the Vice President of Czech Senate, Honorable Jitka Sedlova, and Honorable Shiri Oberfalzer in cooperation with Parliamentary Group of Tibet in the Senate, International Campaign for Tibet Europe, Czech Support Tibet, and Synopsis and European Values Center for Security Policy. Representative Rixin Khengang of Bureau to Tibet, Brazil, participated in Tibet Advocacy in EU, initiated by Michael van Walt van Praag, who has been visiting European countries advocating for Tibet. The advocacy team met EU and Belgian lawmakers engaging in a series of serious discussions regarding the legal perspective of China-Tibet conflict and the obligation of the international community to resolve it. The Bureau to Tibet in Paris, in coordination with local Rigpa Buddhist Center, received the 43rd Sakya Trizin Kyuntung Gyana Vajra Rinpoche, who bestowed teachings on Vajrakaliya Puja for the Tibetans and devotees in France at Rigpa Loripling Retreat Center from Friday last week for 3 days. As requested by Sakya Tsechen Association, Rinpoche presided over the ceremony of the annual Grand Vajrakaliya Drupcho and conferred Vajrakaliya empowerment to around 550 devotees comprising both Tibetans and Westerners. Coordinator for Tibetans in Nepal, Tsepri Lopan Tulku Ngawang Chokdup, paid visits to Namgyal Higher Secondary School and Songjin Brikuti Boarding High School to apprise the Tibetan and Himalayan students on the cause of Tibet on Wednesday last week. During his interaction with students, the coordinator talked about topics concerning Tibet and the Tibetan cultural heritages that are also shared by the Himalayan communities. He also spoke about the Nalanda tradition from which Tibetan Buddhism was originated, along with the importance of preserving Tibet's language, traditions, and customs identical to the Himalayas. Office of Tibet, Taiwan received President Nathan Myanza-led delegation from International Religious Freedom, who paid courtesy visit to the office on Thursday last week. Representative Kelsang Gyaltsen Bawa updated the delegation on the repressive Chinese policy threatening Tibetan Buddhism. On Monday this week, Secretary Mingyur Yutun accompanied President Myanza and other dignitaries from Chinese Christian Aid Committee, Taiwan Tanglo Association and Taiwan's Committee on China Human Rights to meet President Yu Si-kun of the Legislative Yuan of the Republic of China. Secretary Mingyur Yutun briefed the dignitaries on the Chinese government's repression of religious freedom inside Tibet and implored for support from democratic nations like the US, Taiwan and others. President Yu Si-kun shared that he holds the Tibetan situation into consideration. Representative Kelsang Gyaltsen Bawa and staff from the Office of Tibet in Taiwan on Thursday this week received the arrival of the 11th Kirti Rinpoche, Lobsang Tenzin Jigme Yeshe Kyamzo Rinpoche at Taipei. Those were the top news of the week. For more news on Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration, please visit the following websites. Thank you for being with us. Have a great weekend.